Hey there, welcome to Touched by Heaven. Brand new episode coming up next week, but I couldn't run the cliffhanger last week without concluding it this week. We've had poor David hanging literally by his fingertips for the last week, so we need to conclude this episode this week, okay? Enjoy Touched by Heaven, everyday encounters with God.
And I slipped. And I find myself hanging off the cliff face with just the tips of my fingers hanging into the rock on both hands. And I couldn't feel anything below me with my feet. And I'm outstretched and there's nothing. I've never been so scared in my life.
This is Touched by Heaven. Everyday encounters with God, those moments when heaven and earth collide. And we see God, we see his hand reaching out to us, attempting to get our attention, inviting us into a closer relationship. Here we share stories of encounter with angels, divine intervention, prophetic dreams, visions, near-death experiences, big and little God incidents. I am your host, Trapper Jack. Welcome to episode 133. It's the cliffhanger. David has been hanging out on that cliff for a week now, and his arms they're about to go. Oh, if you weren't here last week, you have to go back. You gotta go. You gotta hear how he got out there. We'll wait for you. Really, just go ahead. We'll just sit around twiddling our thumbs while you go back to the last episode to find out how Medjugorje, Bosnia. Because last week we were talking to Angeline and her experiences about Medjugorje, and her parents had their experiences.
The fruits of Medjugorje are plain for millions of pilgrims. It is a place that converts hearts.
Medjugorje is all about conversion. So many souls have been converted there. David's conversion story really begins in Medjugorje. So let's just let's get David off this cliff and into his story of what led to him becoming a believer. Here on Touched by Heaven, everyday encounters with God. Do you want to tell us about the agnostic you kind of flipped around? You took an agnostic to Medjugorje.
I prayed. Well, yes, I did. Well, he's here with me. Do you want to talk, Dave?
Is David ready to talk?
Yeah, I am. But I met Ange at a pub in Perth in Western Australia, which is on the west coast, and she lived in Sydney on the east coast, so 2,000 kilometres between us. And if you've, to your listeners, if you've listened to a podcast, you get a sense that she's been with God for a long time. Well, I hadn't. And I instantly fell in love with her. And if there was a story of love at first sight, this was it. But I grew up with a belief in God, or that there was a God, not knowing him. So when we were talking on the phone on occasion, she'd go, "Oh, I'm just off to pray a rosary." Well, so one thing that was scaring the hell out of me was that this rosary thing, because I didn't know what it was. And it's like her parents were having prayer groups. And for me, I was a bit like, that's a bit strange. I don't do that sort of stuff here. I don't know what that's about. But that was about it. She was going to be going overseas. And when I got back to Perth, I went to go to work and I couldn't actually go to work. I got up and I found myself almost in tears. I was like, what is going on? I was like, I couldn't think straight and stuff like that. And I phoned my mum and spoke to her about it. And she goes, you know what? I'm a nurse. I know what's wrong with you. You're lovesick. And I went, oh, you got to be kidding. She goes, that's it. You need to be with this person. So that afternoon I went into work and I quit.
Wait a minute. Lovesick boy quits because girl has gone to Europe or about to, or whatever this is. Why'd you quit your job? What's that have to do with Angeline?
I couldn't bear the thought that she would be away for 3 or more months because it was an open ticket. Put my car on the market. My mum sold my car, which gave me some more money to take off or to go on the trip. And then I phoned Ange and I went, oh, how you going? I hope you don't mind. I know you're going overseas. Well, I'm coming with you. Sort of hoping that she wouldn't say, well, no. Because she'd planned this trip by herself,
Was she happy? Shocked? More shocked than happy?
A bit of both, I think. But I just couldn't fathom not spending time with her. I was on my path of trying to convince her to marry me. She just hadn't worked it out yet that I was going to get there. I just had to wear her down. She left. And a few weeks before I was due to go, because she was off to World Youth Day. And so I met up with her in Paris. I'm a young guy. I'm 30. She's 22 2 at this stage. And so anyway, we were in Paris. We were there when Lady died actually, the weekend. We walked past the overpass. And that doesn't mean a lot, but it's just context of the time frame. And one of the things we're on our way back to Brindisi, which is at the base of Greece, and that's how you get back into Italy. And anyway, we'd had a bit of an argument and stuff, and I went up on the deck of the ship and just sat out the front of the deck of the ship. It was the night time. And it was probably one of the times that I sort of had a conversation with God, a prayer, if you like. And I said, look, really, this is really hard, but if we're supposed to be together, I'm going to need your help, because there's just there's a gap between us spiritually. She's really quite a holy person, and I'm a ordinary sort of guy, but I don't get all that sort of stuff. And anyway, at that moment, a shooting star went across the sky, and I went, all right, I'll take that as a bit of a sign. Little did I know, Ange was downstairs going through our passports and looking at a trip to Medjugorje.
Since 1981, Mary has been appearing there to 6 visionaries, delivering secrets to them, these forecasts of things to come.
And she said, if you'd like to come, you don't have to, but if you'd like to come, I'm going to go. And it was interesting because I sort of went, I don't know. And then I went, you know what, if I don't go with her, through all of her experiences and bits that she shared with me, I potentially might miss something in her life that I can't get back through us not maybe sharing it. So I said, yeah, look, I'll come. In my mind, going to Medjugorje is probably like a lot of people. There's going to be, hotels there. You can go in the swimming pool. There'll be tennis courts. There'll be stuff that you can do. Yeah, there'll be a church and people can go and pray and do all that sort of stuff. But, there'll be some stuff there for me. There isn't. I just put that out there, folks. There isn't.
Not the normal tourist attraction with the lovely, look, the amusement park's right over there, honey. Yeah, not there. Not there.
I'll go and do that. You just go do your thing. You have a great week. I'll have a great week. We'll catch up at the end. Yeah, no, it's not like that. Anyway, we get into Medjugorje, and we basically I didn't feel I was worthy to be inside the church, and I got through the Mass and was pretty happy to get outside afterwards. So the Friday was a pretty normal day. I went to Mass with Ange again and felt very uncomfortable. And as I was praying down on my knees, again, you can hear the change in my voice. It's a bit emotional, but I was kneeling down at the back, just inside the church this time, and I felt a hand come on my shoulder. And now normally you'd flick around and go, who's touching me? And it came over on my right shoulder and just comforted me, one hand on my shoulder. There was nobody there. There were people around me, but not within a metre of me. And I felt the hand of comfort on my shoulder, which to me now afterwards I come to know is, Jesus putting his hand or God putting his hand on my shoulder just to comfort me, to try and calm me. And it was okay that I was in the church. Ange, in the meantime, she's going to prayer groups and she's getting involved with all sorts of speeches and all sorts of stuff. God bless them, but they were trying to explain everything about God to me, and I mean everything. If something they have to explain it to me, or we go to, this is what happens in the Mass, this is what's happening here. To be honest with you, I was so full. I actually indicate, my hand up above my ears. I'm really full of all this religious stuff. I'm just going to go off and just go for a walk. It was a beautiful day, sun shining. So I left her a note. Don't worry about me. It's all cool. And in my mind, I'm going, oh, man, this is crazy. What am I doing here? Ange is going to be a nun. I'm really not the person for her. She needs somebody way better than me. I bought a bottle of water and I was walking up the track, and after a while I had a drink and I finished it. And at that point I sort of stopped and I went, you know what, I don't want to carry this bottle of water. Seems a bit insignificant now, folks, but it's what happened later on. So anyway, I said to God, if you're listening, look, I'll just pop it down here on this tree, and I'll pick it up on my way back. All right, that's all cool. Anyway, I kept hiking, and I could see up on the hill, which is next to Mount Crucifix, an old radio tower, quite a way up. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to hike up to that. So I got up there just before sunset, and it was abandoned. There's a bit of a house or something there, and I thought, bugger it, I'm going to climb this radio tower. So I climbed up this tower. The top was broken off, so I figured maybe it was part of from the war or something like that. And I climbed up the top, and it was just the most magnificent sort of pre-sunset. I could see out over the mountains, and there was some low-lying clouds, and peaks were sticking through, and the sun was setting. So the colours over the top of the clouds was just spectacular. It's probably one of the most beautiful sunsets I'd ever seen. And it was so beautiful that I thought, you know what, I just want to get back and see Ange, and maybe tomorrow I'll bring her up and show her. So I said to God then, I said, oh, look, I'm really sorry. I know I said I'd get that water bottle, but I'll take this road here, the shortcut, and I'll come back and I'll get it tomorrow. And I was running down the hill. The track got less and less, and eventually I ended up in a thicket.
You don't have a path anymore, do you?
No, it's gone. All right, so I'm hoping there's a path. Well, anyway, the next thing that happens is I slip. I'm 6'1". I'm a pretty reasonably big guy, and I slipped, and I find myself hanging off a cliff face with just the tips of my fingers hanging into the rock on both hands, and I couldn't feel anything below me with my feet, and I'm outstretched, so I'm a pretty big guy, and there's nothing. I potentially was hanging off the edge of a cliff, and that I might disappear into one of these caves and never be found. I've never been so scared in my life. I'd used a lot of energy. I was really tired, and I was hanging on by the tips of my fingers.
Is it so dark you can't see what's below you?
Absolutely.
You're just hanging off. You're hanging off a cliff.
I'm hanging off a cliff, and I'm hanging off on the tips of my fingers, no further back than its first two knuckles. Tired, scared as hell. And I don't usually get scared. I'm someone that gets out in the bush and goes on hikes and, survival sort of stuff. So I just then prayed to Our Lady, and I said, if you give me the strength to get out of this, I'm just going to thank you so much. Help me.
If I may interject at this moment, while David is hanging, I'm making him hang even longer now. He's hanging there. Now, he's in the dark. He can't see. I mean, maybe it's only a 3-inch drop to the ground, and maybe it's 300 feet. You don't know. He doesn't know what's what. What does he know?
Above me is the thicket of this tree, and I'm clinging to a rock face.
He knows he just fell through this thicket. He knows there's shrubbery there. Maybe there's shrubbery right above where his hands are. Maybe there's something to grab onto. He's just hanging there in that silence. And he lets go of one of his hands and just reaches, hoping, praying, and grabbing.
I managed to get hold of a bit of a branch and then just sort of pull myself up. There's nothing to put my feet on, so I just had to physically pull myself up.
Somehow. And why did you go to Mary and not Jesus?
Good question. Haven't got a clue. I think, she was with me at that stage, and I think it was just a case of, Mary, get me out of here. That's what I did. She was the one that came to mind.
I think that's fascinating. I think that's just really interesting. Okay. Because Medjugorje is more about Mary leading us to Jesus, so made sense. You're hearing about Mary all the time.
Yeah,
okay.
It does.
Okay.
Oh, and boy, did she. I was exhausted, so I actually had to crawl on my hands and knees to get back up the hill. Anyway, I made it back to the road. I stood up at this point, and I was walking along, and I got back to the road, and I just hit the deck, hands and knees, and I just, thank God. I just prayed, and I just said, thank you so much for getting me out of there. I've never been so scared. Thank you. Well, then what came to me from there was, what do they call it? The enlightenment of conscience or something? Enlightenment of conscience. Well, my eyes are closed. I'm bawling my eyes out. And just about everything I can think of in my life that I had done wrong to people just went like one of those old yeah, but like one of those old cameras where you turn the handle to see the picture, the old black and white ones. It was just little flickers to people I'd hurt or in something that I'd said, and just this full sense. And what I came away with from that was just a real clear sense of what was wrong and what was right, and that I should live and try and do the right thing. I got this. I'm still bawling my eyes out. This stuff's coming through. And it had been quite a few minutes. And I started to get pins and needles on the tip of my nose. But they started to expand in it like a circle out from my nose. And they sort of went round until it sort of got to the edge of, I suppose, my hairline and my face. And it was really funny, but I just got this sense that I had hands on my face. But what I realised, it wasn't that, is that I'd put my face into someone's hands, and those hands were Mary's. And she was comforting me, and she was there with me at that time. And it was really clear that they were hers. There's no mistake. And not long after that, with that comfort, I opened my eyes, and from behind me, so I had them open, a soft light started to come across the ground from behind me and illuminate sort of underneath me. I was down on my hands and underneath me and off in front of me. And I instantly knew that that was Jesus, and it was also the Holy Trinity. And the next minute was a shooting star went across the sky. Now, the shooting star wasn't just your average. This thing was, I reckon it to being over here, VW Combi vans, I don't know, like a transit van in America. It was about the size of that, just blew across the sky. And I just went, okay, all right, yeah, all right, it's real. Fair enough. I won't, I'm not here to sort of go, yeah, sure, no worries.
Everyone has their own conversion story. Yours is just a little different.
It is a bit different. And can I tell you, this one for me, when I describe it before I tell anyone, I said, look, you have to understand that God had to take a baseball bat to me, for me to understand. So I had started a conversation with him. Obviously, the first question was, is this real? The next one is that, can I tell anyone? Can I tell Ange? And a shooting star went across the sky. I went, yes. My next question was, can I tell anyone else? And nothing happened. So my apprehension to sharing this with you today maybe stems back to that too, is I'm always very careful who I share this with. I said, can I ask Ange to marry me? And a shooting star went across the sky. I went, yes, awesome. And
I've never heard so many shooting stars in my life as with this story. My gosh.
I saw 9 that night. As I walked further along, that set of stars then faded and another set illuminated. And as I went down the mountain, the stars would illuminate and point in a different direction to help me to go down the path and to get down the mountain. I got down the track and I went, you know what, God, I want to pick up that water bottle, but I've got no idea where it is. And at that point in time, a shooting star went across the sky, and it went across from right to left, and right there next to me was the bottle on the tree that I'd left. And I think that one was just confirmation again that this is real. God was listening. He heard me when I said I was going to put
Always. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
We've all been wondering where this bottle was. I've been waiting. Okay, where's the bottle come into this thing? He's going to find this bottle.
And the other thing was the shortcut. Don't take the shortcut. Don't take the shortcut. It's not the best road to take. Stick with the right path. And he'd shown me that you shouldn't take shortcuts in life.
Let's pause right about here. Alexa, have you ever heard of Patreon? I need to do a Patreon break here.
The noun patriot can have a few meanings. A person who loves, supports, and defends.
Touched by heaven. Who loves, supports. Yes, I want to thank all of you patriots who help support us through Patreon. If you have a sense about these things, you get a nudge in these things, as those who are helping us do, they get nudges. Have you had your nudge yet? Then go to patreon.com, search for Trapper Jack. So thank you so much. This has been a Patreon break, and thanks for taking part in it, Alexa. I really appreciate your help today.
I haven't heard anything in the last minute, but you can listen to all your requests in the privacy section of the Alexa app.
I really appreciate that. All right, enough of that. Now we're going to get back to David. And David, you finally find your way back to Ange. You just had this life-changing experience. So what do you say to her?
Well, guess what? She's in a group of people. I can't tell her anything. I'm not supposed to. God just told me, don't tell nobody.
We're about to take a midnight climb up Cross Mountain. That's what we were about to do, midnight climbing up the Cross.
Oh, great. So yeah, David's ready for another climb. Let's go for another climb, hon.
Yeah. Angel's like, do you want to come? And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm coming. So we head off with the group.
he told me the story exactly word for word as it happened to him, and that was how he told it. And so I was like, wow, I was so bowled over. And I said, is this really true? And another combi van shooting star shot across the sky, and he wasn't even reacting. I'm like, oh, my God, did you just see what just happened? And he just looked at me and went, yes, Ange, this is what I'm trying to tell you. This has just happened to me.
That's the one I just saw. Like, that's just like the one I just saw.
Whenever you needed a shooting star, you got a shooting star.
So that she could realize that what I was telling her, like, there's some proof. Like, that's what I've just seen. So in a way, it was hopefully confirming for her what she was.
And obviously she wants to hear you're having this experience, because if she is going to marry this guy, you got to be on the same page to some degree with somebody as involved in their faith, obviously, as Angeline is.
God didn't finish with me there. I was finished. I thought, that's pretty spectacular. Like, for me, that was wow.
Something hit David after coming down the hill. Something hit him so strong. It didn't make a lot of sense, but he felt that after everything he had just experienced, this is his big conversion moment. After everything he has just experienced, he feels God isn't going to give him anything more. That's it. Unless. It's an unless. He feels this huge push to go to confession. He's not a Catholic. What the heck? Confession. And he knows the stories. He hears about all these stories about people going to confession. There are these huge long lines to, these lifelong confessions of everything I've ever done wrong, and just these great moments of conversion and all. And he feels he needs to get in that line. He needs to go to confession. Otherwise, he is going to be stalled. But if he goes to confession, maybe there's more to come. That's his overall sense, that he has to go to confession, which he does, prior to going to Mass.
2 days after, when he was in the church, he saw some amazing things. So that's this. If you want to hear that, he can talk to you about that.
I saw Jesus' face above the altar, Mary, and I saw at the point of the Eucharist that the Holy Spirit came down on the altar. It was golden.
That's awesome. You got to see that. Because for those who don't know, at the Mass, the priest calls the Holy Spirit down to the bread and the wine to turn them into the body and blood of Jesus Christ, and you actually saw it. Did you understand what you were seeing? Sure. Did you understand it?
Oh, yeah. It was a lesson. God was teaching me this day. I was, again, standing more towards the back. I felt like I needed to kneel opposite to when everyone was standing, or stand up when everyone was sitting, if I can put it to you that way. But in this particular part of the Mass, I just was compelled to stand up. And I was getting a sense, my feet were facing the altar, but I could feel my top of my torso actually being turned towards the side of the church and to look up at the stained glass windows. And you question yourself about these things, but I went, well, I'm just going to go with it. I'm going to be open. I'll see what happens. If there's fruits of it, great. Well, there was. And through the stained glass window, it was actually a rosary. There's one of the windows is a rosary stained glass window. And as the priest was talking, different parts of the rosary would light up to teach me, like, these were the steps to heaven. When it got to Our Lady, the stained glass window, the beam of light came straight through just that part, and it was red and it was throbbing like, this is Our Lady. But it was teaching me about the rosary. When the consecration came, my body turned back towards the altar so that I could see Jesus above it. And then also the Holy Spirit coming down on the altar. But then my body then turned back towards the stained glass window. And as everybody went up to have the Eucharist, I was looking, and the crucifix lit up. It was sparkling like golden. And every time someone put the Eucharist in their mouth, I felt it. I felt the joy of every single person taking the Eucharist. My eyes were tearful with joy. It was the most unreal feeling, which I wish I could just touch anybody. It was the joy of God. It was unbelievable. And throughout that whole time, I'm standing there in the church looking up at the stained glass window while people are taking the Eucharist, and I could feel it. I could feel it right through my whole body. The joy was so immense. It was unreal. It was fantastic. My eyes was bald, like tears were running down the side of my face. The thought that came to me is that Jesus is here every day. Just pop down to the church. He's in the tabernacle. Our Lady's there to sort of guide you to him, but Jesus is in the tabernacle every day. He could walk there right now, and he's there. And when the bells ring in church just prior to the consecration, that's heaven opening up and coming down on the altar. I've seen it. It's true. It's unreal. And as I said, and it was just interesting that I prayed to Our Lady to teach me the rosary, and boy, I had no idea how that was going to happen, and that she took me right through, or the Holy Spirit, not just Our Lady, but Jesus as well, took me through not only the rosary, but also the Mass, and showed me how it works. I walked out of the church looking for Ange, because obviously I wanted to share this with her. We met up on the street, and she came over to me and she goes, "Oh, David, I've got something for you. I've got something to share with you." And I went, "Oh, I got something to share with you." And I said, as polite as I am, I said, "Well, you know what? You go first." Well, she handed me a rosary from a priest that had given them to her to give to me, and she placed it in my right hand. What you have to understand is a couple of days before, whilst we were lucky enough to be in with Maria, one of the visionaries, for her vision, one of the visions I had while I was there was that of a hand in my hand, and I couldn't close it. I couldn't close it properly. It was my left hand, and I didn't know why. It was empty, but I couldn't close it. So when Ange put the rosaries in my hand and I had my cross there, it fulfilled that vision. And I said, "You've got no idea what you've just done. You've just put in my hand something which I saw a couple of days before, but it rounded off what was going on." And then obviously after that, I had a chance to share with her about my rosary and the Mass experience, and how I'd been taught the Mass and also the rosary by Our Lady and God. So maybe if that's what you take away from my story, then
how beautiful.
That's cool.
And how does it feel for you? I mean, you have this beautiful Angeline who has her faith, and you want to get into her world, and you know that you need to be experiencing some of this. How does it feel to know that God approved of you to be with her?
Honestly, it was fantastic. Mind, I still thought initially she was going to be a nun, but then I started to go, hang on a minute, why has God done this for me? I sat round in a room of 30 pilgrims, I think it would have been. And, everyone had a story. Everyone had something. For one lady, it was, the smell of a rose, or to be given a rose. Other people had different stories. Yeah, mine's bigger and longer and maybe a bit more fanciful, but you know what? It's what I needed. God gave me what I needed. And I'd hate for anyone to go away and think, well, I need to go there because I want to have God will give you what you need. And he needed to take a baseball bat to me. You know what? It was Miriana in one of her testimonies saying, Our Lady just wants you to go back home and be a good example. Just live. Pray the rosary, fast, go to Mass, go to confession. And there's one more. I'll read the Bible. Go home to where you live and be a good example for other people. And they will, that example will flow out to them. And really just try to be the best example that you can. You can't do it without God. Anyway, that's enough from me, I think.
Angeline, you get to wrap it up here.
Thank you, Trapper. I really do feel that Our Lady was calling us, or calling you, like to hear about your podcast. I just know she, or you call it Jesus or Mary. I often pray and ask, Lord, what will you have me do? Where would you have me go? What would you have me say, and to who? And you always wonder, and then this happened. So he surprises us every day. I would never have expected this to happen, actually. And for David to share his story, he doesn't share his story very often at all. I've shared it more than him. So he surprises us every day. And interesting that, we found you, Tucker. Sorry, Trapper. Did I call you Trapper?
Tucker, yeah.
Tucker
Sorry,
Jack,
Tucker.
don't you? That's my name, Tucker Jack. Yeah.
How about I'll do a deal with you? I'll keep praying for you and praying for your podcast. And yeah, because I just think it's wonderful. But faith is a journey and it continues, and conversion is continual. We can still lose our way, but thankfully we've got that foundation that where Jesus brings us back and continues just working on us. He's so loving and so merciful. So there's a certain forces that would prefer this kind of stuff doesn't get out there. So you can be assured of my prayers.
Thank you, Angeline. Thank you, David. An amazing two-parter about Medjugorje and cliffhangers and this bridge to heaven. So many things still happening, of course, at Medjugorje every day. And I find it just amazing what God did for David. I asked him, how does it feel to know that God approved of you? Because look at what God did. From the cliffhanger to then getting out of there, the examination of conscience that he went through, feeling Mary's hands on his face, seeing that light that was Jesus, that was the Trinity, finding the water bottle, having the stars light his way down. Oh, of course, and the shooting stars, of course, the size of what? Vehicles going through the sky. I mean, all of this, and then what happened at the Mass, the explanation of what the rosary was about and what was going on during the Mass. God did all of that for David to get him on the same page with Angeline. I would call that God approving of David for Angeline, but wanting him, helping him get there with her. That was just a huge miracle. But then that's Medjugorje, that's hey, just another day in Medjugorje, Bosnia, Oh, and did I mention at the very beginning about this book that literally just fell into my lap this week about Medjugorje and the messages that have been there, have been given by Mary, through the decades to the six visionaries. Right now I'm kind of in the early part, but so they're asking Mary all kinds of questions, you were assumed into heaven, body and soul. Was this before or after you died? Mary said before. Not unprecedented. Old Testament, I think it's Enoch and Elijah, right? Assumed into heaven. Are all religions the same, Mary? No. All people are equal before the Lord. Not all religions are equal. They adhere to the commandments in different ways. And so she didn't say who, what, when, where, how. She just said, no, not all religions are the same. Let's see, what else? Oh, it's interesting. Early on, there were these two communist women that the visionaries knew, and they were plotting. They said, hey, kids, why don't you get in the car? Let's go for a ride. And it was kind of, well, we have to be back by such and such time. Mary's going, yeah. So they get in the car, and they go driving, and they have no intention of bringing them back for the 6:40 appearance of Mary. We need to go back. No. Well, we need to pull over because it's getting close to the time Mary's coming. No. I mean, they were just truly trying to mess everything up. What happens? The car breaks down. The engine conks out. They roll over to the side of the road. The kids get out of the car, and then here comes Mary. Those two women, the book was written in 2015, but as of then, those two women go to rosary and Mass every night, ever since. That was their conversion moment. She said that there is extra protection for those who are consecrated to Jesus through Mary, and we've talked about consecrating ourselves that way and the extra protections. Something's coming. More news from Medjugorje, I have no doubt, is still to come. Again, thank you, Angeline and David. Now, I need your story. What's happened to you? What encounter have you had? Get a hold of me at touchedbyheaven.net. Special Patreon shout-out this week goes to Kelly Cottam. Thank you so much, Kelly, for participating through Patreon and supporting us in what we do. Can't thank you enough, and thank you so much. And I would ask if these episodes fortify your faith, bring you in closer, part of your conversion story. We're all still being converted daily. If it does all that, come here to episode 133 at touchedbyheaven.net or go straight to patreon.com. Look for Trapper Jack, and you can begin your support there. Thank you so much. Thanks for keeping us a 5-star podcast by your ratings and reviews. And how about we do this again next week, shall we? Here at Touched by Heaven. Everyday encounters with God. I'm Trapper Jack.
We found you, Tucker. Sorry, Trapper. Did I call you Trapper?
Tucker Jack, don't you? That's my name, Tucker Jack. Yeah.